So without further ado, we're going to be bringing on our first guest, and her name is Gwen Sutton. And Gwen Sutton is a multi-published author. She has several books, and she has a brand new book that she wants to make you all aware of. So we are glad to welcome Gwen Sutton. And her first name, her nickname is the same as mine, but I'm pretty sure we don't have the same first name, but our whole names. But anyway, Gwen, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Hello. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I am honored and grateful to be here.
Well, you're welcome. And I was saying we were both Gwen, but my first name is Guinevere, and I've only met two other Guineveres in my life. So all the Gwens I know are Gwendolyn. I think I
Yes,
met one Gwinnett. I met one Gwinnett, but
yes, I'm Gwendolyn,
okay, yeah.
but no one calls me that.
Yeah, no one calls me Guinevere. Everyone calls me Gwen. And when people occasionally assume that my name is Gwendolyn, I quickly correct them. It's not Gwendolyn.
I
But
get
anyway,
that.
when you've been a long time client of ours for Kush City with several of your books, and for your most recent book you're promoting is called Brotherhood and Betrayal, and your subheading is The Preacher and the Pimp. And
Yes,
so, do you have a copy of your book handy that you can show?
yes, I do.
Okay.
This is the copy right here. Can
Okay.
you see it okay?
Raise it up a little bit. Just make it higher. Yeah, there we go. So they're two, are they biological brothers?
Yes, yes, they are.
Okay.
They were raised by a single mom. They have different fathers, but they
Okay.
are biological brothers.
Okay.
But
So
they
they're not
end up
twins. They're not twins.
They're not twins.
Mhm.
No, no.
Okay.
Troy is the oldest and Trey is the youngest. And they do end up in foster care, which is why they take two different paths in life.
Okay. So they both end up in foster care?
They both end up in foster care. I don't want to give the whole story away, but something happens to their mom early on in life. But she has instilled such a sense of brotherhood in them, even though they go their separate ways, they go on their separate journeys. But they do have a lot of issues and problems because you got one becomes a preacher, the other becomes a pimp. So how are they going to, walk together along the same path? But it's full of drama. It's full of, and what I like to do with my stories, I like to address social issues. And
Okay.
all of my books, starting from the very first one, deals with social issues. And do you mind if I give a little background about why I started writing?
No, no, that's what we want to know. That's what
Okay.
we just want to know.
Okay. I started writing. I didn't intend to be an author. I didn't come out thinking I want to be an author. I want to write a book. But after I retired from the federal government, I kept getting this vision. And it was about a young man. He had everything going for him. Handsome, charismatic, athletic, intelligent. But he goes home one day from school break. He goes to his home on spring break. He goes into his bedroom. He takes out a gun and he shoots himself in the head. He takes his own life. And this is his first year of college. And I couldn't understand for the life of me, why, Lord, am I getting this vision of this young man taking his own life? And God put it on my heart. He said, I want you to write about suicide. And the reason he wanted me to write about suicide is because something happened to me when I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, my mother committed suicide. And she did this, it was a few days after Christmas. My father had passed a few days before Christmas. My mother took her own life a few days after Christmas. And it took me over 50 years to be able to really talk about it. I used to tell people, they used to ask me about my parents. I said, well, my mother passed when I was young. So my parents passed when I was young. But I couldn't talk about how she took her life. And when God gave me that vision, he was telling me, I want you to write a story about suicide because you have not sufficiently dealt with it. You have it's back there. It's back in your head somewhere, but you have not dealt with it. And he said, by you sharing your story, not only are you going to set yourself free, but you're going to set a whole lot of other people free. And so I said, Lord, are you sure? I never wrote a book. I don't know nothing about writing. And he said, I know, but if I tell you to do something, I already know you can do it. So I sat down with my little pen and paper and I started scribbling my notes. And I'm telling you, when God says he can bless you to do something, he really can. Because when I started writing that story, it was like I could see it in my mind. It was unfolding before me. And I was just writing what I was seeing in my vision that he gave me. So that's what started it all. I did not intend to write, but I wrote that story, and I'm gonna show you all a copy of my first book. This is the
Okay.
first book. It says
Okay.
all means all if you believe. And
Okay.
this one is the one that deals with suicide. And it's really helped a lot of people. It set me free. But there was one compliment, one feedback I got from a woman, and she told me, she said, you know what? After I read that book, I was finally able to forgive someone in my life. Evidently, someone who she loved dearly had taken their own life, and she could not forgive them for doing that. And then she read the book, and she saw that suicide is not about, it's about that person. A lot of times they're dealing with something that's so traumatic, and there could be mental illness involved. With my mother, she was a stay-at-home mom, and when my father died, she didn't have a lot of education. She had never worked outside the home. And it wasn't because she didn't love us. She was dealing with mental illness during the whole time. She was dealing with mental illness. And so when she took her own life, in her mind, she felt like we would be better off without her. She planned it. She had people there at the house for us. Her best friend down the street was in the house. The neighbor was in the house. So she had planned it. And that day she did it. I remember it was a beautiful sunny day right after Christmas. I went for a bike ride. And when I came home, she was gone. And I could not, when you're 10 years old, you don't understand the permanency of it. And
No.
it really got to me when I became a teenager and young adult and she wasn't there. And I just suppressed it. Even my husband, who I love dearly and have been married for 35 years, he didn't know until I wrote this book and I told him about it. And I said, you never even pressed me about it. He said, I couldn't press you about it because I could tell you wasn't ready to talk about it. But that's how I started writing.
Okay,
That's
now all means all. Is that fiction or nonfiction?
all of them are fiction, but all of my books are fictions, but they're based on fact. So
Okay, so I have a question about is what's the point of view for all means all? If does the main character commit suicide, or does and if so, then does he do it? Well, if he's already committed suicide, you do flashbacks, or
well,
is someone else talking about him?
well, it opens up. I don't want to give too much away, but it
Mhm.
opens up with him doing the act, but it goes back to show why he
Okay.
did it.
Okay.
And then about halfway, it goes to show the aftermath his suicide has on his family. And
Okay.
it's very traumatic on his sister, on his mother, on all of those involved. And it shows not only how it impacts them, but how it impacts you for a lifetime. I still am impacted by my mother's suicide to this day. Uh, I deal with it. Can I show a picture of my mother? I
Oh,
want to show
yeah,
you.
certainly.
This is my mother.
Okay.
Her name was Leona Bell Smith, and she was the sweetest person. I thank her for the 10 years that she did give me. Those were the 10 most wonderful years of my life. So I thank her every day. I don't hold it against her. I know it was hard for her. She was in a dark place. It was the mental illness and all of that. And she really didn't feel like she had it in her to raise 4 children. And I was 10. We ranged from the age of 10 to 15 at the time. So
Okay.
that's why she did what she did. And I forgave her and I love her with all my heart. And a lot of people are dealing with this suicide problem, but people don't like to talk about it.
Mm.
People don't like to talk about tough things. And that's what I write about. I write about the tough issues in life.
Did she leave a note?
She did, but I never read it. She left a note.
Okay.
She
Okay.
left a note. I'm being 10. They're not going to share it with me, right?
Right. Well, I didn't know if maybe they, well, I don't know. I'm just asking questions.
Yeah.
Questions that, the audience may want to know as well.
Yes,
Uh,
she did. She did,
and
but I never saw it.
never
Uh,
saw the
and it's
note.
probably good I didn't. All things for a reason. I don't think it would have done me any good to see the letter. My aunt, her, which was her sister, got the letter, but she didn't. I don't want to go into what she did with it. But yeah,
Mhm.
there was a note. But some people do leave notes, some don't. You
Right.
know. Uh, but that's why I started writing, and from there it just took off. And I assumed after I wrote All Means All, that was it. I was done. I had done what God had assigned me to do. But he gave me another story to tell. I didn't, it turned out to be a trilogy. I call it a Faith Under Fire trilogy. Because once God saw that I trusted him enough to go ahead and do what he told me to do, and I'm a Christian fiction writer, but my books are urban, they're raw, they're intense, they're real. I mean, I keep it real. I'm authentic. I don't sugarcoat anything. If you're going to deal with these subjects, you have to tell them like they're TITs. And that's what I do. And then he told me to write a book called Endurance. And let me show you, that's the second book. This is Endurance, the second book in the trilogy. And
Okay.
this one is about something that I have no personal experience with. It's about child sex trafficking. And I
Okay.
said, well, why am I going to write about child sex trafficking? I don't know anything about it. And God said, didn't you do what I told you to do last time? I said, yeah. He said, I got a story for you to tell. So I sit down and I wrote Endurance, but I did my research and I
Mhm.
talked to people who have been through it. And while I was writing it, a young lady actually that I knew went through it herself, a young teenager. So people don't know a lot about human trafficking and child sex trafficking, but I wrote about endurance and I did a lot of research. So the book is real, it's emotional, it's raw, it's intense. Some people have told me, oh, it's too much. It's a little too real. It gets to me, it gets to my heart. And I said, well, if it's hard to read, if it's hard for us to read, imagine how hard it is for these young girls and boys to live this tragedy, this atrocity, this multi-billion-dollar business that is happening to our young people. And it could happen to anybody. No family is exempt. If you think your family exempt, you're fooling yourself. It could happen to anybody, anytime, anywhere. It's happening in big cities. It's happening in small cities. It's happening overseas. It's happening everywhere. It's big industry. It's big industry.
Yeah, the child sex trafficking, it kind of was underground for a long time, and in recent years, it's become more prominent in terms of being in the news more and people becoming more aware of it. It's been
Yes.
very recent. I don't know if you saw the movie The Sound of Freedom that was in theaters uh, a few months ago, several
Mm-hmm.
months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was about child sex trafficking.
I
And
didn't see that one, but I,
yeah,
I have seen some
yeah,
movies
it was an
about it.
independent film, and it
Uh,
it really brought it to light. And
yes.
um, it was I would say very, very moving. But there have been many instances in the news of late, and much of it is based on the immigration with some children coming across the border in the United States by themselves or being
True.
basically sold en route to coming to the United States.
Yes, yes. But
Um,
it's a huge problem. And I don't think still it's getting enough publicity. It's not getting enough. I found an organization while I was doing my research. It's called Operation Underground Railroad. And I support that organization through some of the funds I get from selling my book. It's an organization that goes undercover. These men and women, they go undercover and they pretend that they want to buy children or rent them out, and then they go and they work with the local police in the area and they actually rescue these children. They do it here in the United States and they do it overseas. So what I hope that my books will do after you read them is inspire you to do something, to take some action. We can't do everything, but everybody can do something. I mean, you can skip lunch for a day and give that money to one of these organizations that's fighting human trafficking or child sex trafficking.
Now, do your books have, for example, your one on suicide and then the one on sex trafficking, do they have resources listed like in the book
Yes,
itself?
they do. Yes,
And
they do.
organizations that people can support, or like a hotline, some organizations, if you are in the problem, this is a number that you call. If you
Yes.
are considering suicide, this is a number that you call. The suicide hotlines and things like that.
Yes, I
So
try
are
to
those
put,
in the book?
yeah, I try at the end of all of my books, I try to put in resources. For example, if you look at uh this
Now,
one,
which book
this
is that?
this is endurance.
Okay, all right.
And this has the organization I was talking about, Operation Underground Railroad. It also has some other organizations in it that you can call and help in some way. Get involved with it. What I try to do with my books, one, I have to entertain you because you got to be entertained to want to read the book. I try to entertain, I try to educate, and I try to inspire or motivate you to take action. Those are my goals. That's why I write. It's not all about Gwen Sutton. No, what I do is I use the gift that God has blessed me with, and I give all the glory and honor to God because I couldn't do it without him. So I'm just using a gift that he has given me to try to help others in some small way. And that's why I do it.
Okay, what we had a couple of comments from people in the audience. Well, this person asked, Essie Anderson
Mm-hmm.
said, bless you. And I think she misheard. She said, did you say your mom had 10 kids? No, she said her mom had 4 kids, correct?
4 kids.
But you were 10 years old
I was 10.
when she
I was the baby. I was my mama's
oh,
baby.
okay. Yeah, some things are unimaginable, if you
Yes.
haven't been through them. I personally have never known anybody who committed suicide. I
Mm-hmm.
heard it happening to other people and
Right.
people they knew, but I've never personally known anybody who
Yes.
committed
Yes.
suicide. And I can only imagine a person would have to really be at a low point where they felt like there was no alternative.
Yes. They feel like it's no alternative. And you know what? I remember my mother being happy that day. She was, that day she was happy. She was smiling. She had gotten dressed. She went to visit her neighbors. And we thought, mama is going to be okay. But that's the danger point. Sometimes they've made peace with it. When
Mhm.
they've made peace with it, they can seem so calm and you wouldn't, and then it comes out of nowhere. And she was happy that day. And I think she had made peace with it in her mind. She had made peace with it. So everybody's different, and I have a personal experience with it. And if you don't have personal experience with it, I don't wish it on anyone because it impacts you your whole life. You never get. I mean, you go on, and I've went on. Thanks be to God, I'm living my best blessed life. I mean, I didn't have it easy right after my parents died. I didn't have it easy. Uh, that's another story. But then when I got grown and got out on my own, God surrounded me by people who loved and valued me because I had low self-esteem and all of that. All it impacts you in your heart. But then God surrounded me with women, strong, godly women who took me under their wing and showed me I had worth and showed me I had value. It made me want to do something with my life. And so I thank God for that because even though my backstory didn't start off the way, some people have these happy childhoods and I had a different story, but God surrounded me with his love and I have been able to live my best blessed life in spite spite of what I went through. You know,
Did
we
all
don't
of
look
your-
like. Mhm.
Yeah. Did all of your siblings, were you all able to stay together after your mother?
We were able to stay together. Thank God for that. And we were put with family. Thank God for that. So
Okay.
I just have to, I just say thank God for that. We were able to stay together, but we all dealt with it differently. We all dealt with it differently.
Mm.
I would say that.
That's amazing. Now, we've never had a personal conversation, so this I'm hearing, even though
Right.
I have talked to you for several years,
Right.
but we've never talked about our personal
Right.
experiences, and so
Right.
I never knew that about you, and
Right.
that's an amazing story. I've heard about. This is the first time I've heard about someone whose one parent passed away, and then a few days later, the other parent.
I think it was about a little over a week between the two. A
Yeah,
little over
that
a week.
I haven't. That's new. I mean, in terms of, every individual has a unique story.
Right. That's so
Just
true.
like we are all unique, we all have. We don't share fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't share. Our DNA is our own individual. There's no other
Right.
individual like each person, that any human that's ever lived is
Right.
an individual. So everybody has, even living in the same household,
Right.
you
Exactly.
we're different.
We're
Some
different.
of us
We're
can be
different.
very different.
Very different. Very different. Yes.
So, every person has a unique experience uh, that they can share. And that's something
Right.
that we learned early on doing this show, that everybody's story is different.
Right.
There might be some similarities to somebody else, but
Right.
no two people have the same story.
And
And
and what you go through does impact what you become in life. And
right,
because when I wrote my latest two books about two brothers, even though they had the same mother and they grew up in the same household, what they end up going through when they enter foster care really impacted who they become. But what I also try to show in these books is you can't necessarily judge a book by its cover,
okay.
because I mean, even though one becomes a preacher and one becomes a pimp, their stories are surprisingly similar. Sometimes it's even hard to tell who's the preacher, who's the pimp, because
Well,
they're
some
human.
people would argue that sometimes there's overlap,
There's
so
some
you
overlap.
never
There's
know.
some overlap. So you
Yeah,
and you can't really count nobody out,
that's
because
true.
some of the people in Brotherhood and Betrayal, the preacher and the pimp, you have prostitutes, you have pimps, you have, drug users and drug runners, and there's a bunch of different characters. So sometimes the people who we as a society deem as worthless and wretched and all of that, sometimes these people can actually rise up, and the people we put on a pedestal because of their titles and their status in life or their big house, they can fall down. The bottom line is we're all in the same boat.
Well,
we
we all come in the world naked,
Right.
and when we leave, we will be naked. I mean, they
Right.
put clothes on us, but you know, there's no human that doesn't go through birth and death. That's all part, and what we do in between,
Right.
that's up to us.
That's up to us. That's up to us. So
Right.
that's why I really press in Brotherhood and Betrayal, and I try to show that we should not go around judging or looking down on anybody just because of their circumstances, because you don't know the story behind why they became what they became. And if you had walked in their shoes, who knows what you would have become? You know
That's
what I'm saying?
true.
You know.
Now, can you share the cover one more time for your new book?
Oh, okay.
The new book, The Brotherhood and Betrayal. Now, I have a question. Are those two people models? Are those stock photos? Are those people you
These
know?
are, well, when I was working with my publisher to publish the books, I told them what I wanted. I told them I wanted two Black men. I wanted
Okay.
one to be, kind of conservative, and I didn't want to do the old school pimp. You know how them old school pimps with the gold teeth and the big hat and the chains. That's back in the 70s. These human traffickers out there now, these pimps, they regular looking brothers. You wouldn't even be able to know what they're doing because a lot of them are doing this stuff online. So I wanted two brothers who looked different in their attire and their persona. And so that's how I got this.
Okay.
That's how I got this cover.
Okay.
But and there's a lot of twists and turns in my stories. I like to keep you on your toes. I like to keep you on your toes. Now, there's two. This is a book set. There's book one.
Okay.
And book two. They're a set. In book one, I'm kind of setting the foundation. They're boys, they're young boys. So you get to see them as young boys and learn about them, their personalities and what forms them now. And the real drama will start in book two, but you have to read book one to get to book two. Okay. And there's a lot of surprises in there. And there is a twist at the end I don't think anyone will see coming. As a matter of fact, if you see this twist coming, I want you to text me and say, I saw it coming. I'm saying, I don't know about that. Because I didn't even see it coming. Sometimes I be writing books and I surprise myself because it's a gift, it's a vision. I go with the flow. Sometimes I have an outline in my mind, but then I go in a whole different direction when I start writing it.
That happens as a writer, I can attest. Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're at the end of our time, Gwen. What we want you to do is let people know how they can get copies of your books.
Okay, you can go to my website. It's GwenSuttonGotBooks.com. Gwen Sutton got, America's Got Talent, GwenSuttonGotBooks.com. And you can get all of my books are listed on there. And I think I shared with you my Amazon authors page. I shared that link with you. I'm on Amazon. If you put Gwen Sutton Books, all of my books should come up on Amazon too. Okay.
Well, Gwen, it was nice finally meeting you.
It was nice meeting you too. I hate to end. I'm having a ball.
It goes by very fast.
It goes by fast.
But thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV and continued success with your books.
And thank you so much. To God be the glory. And I appreciate everything that you are doing for Black authors. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
And you're welcome. All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.